Hello everyone, welcome to the Conscious Collaboration. My name is Jarrod. Today we are going to be covering a really exciting topic, a topic that a lot of people have questions around when coming to work with ayahuasca. We're going to be talking about what is an ayahuasca ceremony like. If you are considering working with ayahuasca, it's very likely that you're going to have some fears or doubts or questions about what an ayahuasca ceremony is like. Now this is completely normal. Obviously, it's very hard to imagine what an ayahuasca ceremony is like until you've experienced it yourself. Now trying to understand or explain completely what a ceremony is like or what you might experience would probably be like trying to explain to someone what swimming is like to someone who's never encountered water, for instance. It's really one of those things that you need to experience it yourself to be able to gain a really good understanding. I'm going to do my very best in this video to give you an idea of what a ceremony involves, some of the things you might encounter. We're going to talk about the physical ceremony, the ceremonial setting, and kind of what's going on around you. As I mentioned beforehand, we're not going to talk about what your experience is going to be like because each individual is different, each ceremony is different. So we're going to be talking about those sort of physical aspects of the setting and the things that you might encounter during an ayahuasca ceremony. Best way to do this, I think, is to break it down into different sections. First things first, let's try and understand what a ceremony is. We'll move into how different traditions will have different ceremony types or different things that might happen within those ceremonies. We'll touch on that to give you a bit of an understanding. We're going to talk about what the physical ceremony space could potentially look like. We'll talk about some of the people you might encounter during the ceremony staff and guides, maybe some of the different participants as well. We'll talk about some of the things that you might encounter during a ceremonial experience. So during the time you are in ceremony, some of the things you might come across, hear, feel, experience as well. Now, and to finish off, I'll try and give you an example of what a potential timeline or what the curation of the ceremony could potentially look like. So well and truly in the nature of ayahuasca, let's dive in deep. So first things first, what is a ceremony exactly? Now, I'm sure you've encountered this word beforehand. A ceremony could be a wedding ceremony, it could be a graduation ceremony, it could be a retirement ceremony. There's lots of different ceremonies that us as humans hold. Now, generally, just to define it and lay that foundation, a ceremony is generally a formal event or a series of actions that are performed within a duration of time or in a particular order. They're usually marked by some sort of tradition, sometimes some ritual as well. Now, in regards to an ayahuasca ceremony specifically, it's a traditional spiritual ritual or ceremony originating from indigenous cultures of the Amazon basin. It involves the consumption of ayahuasca. Obviously, for those of you who don't know what ayahuasca is, we'll touch on it very lightly. It's a psychoactive brew. It's made from the Banisteriopsis caapi vine mixed with a DMT-rich leaf, which is usually chagro or chacruna. Very occasionally as well, it might have some other natural mixtures in with it as well. But at its core, it is the vine and the leaf to make the ayahuasca brew. Now these ceremonies are typically led by a shaman, sometimes a facilitator, sometimes a shaman working with a facilitator as well. Now the shaman guides the participants through an experience. This is usually described as a journey of self-discovery. It usually involves a lot of emotional healing, a lot of growth. There's many different aspects to it, physical, emotional, spiritual. They're very deep, meaningful experiences, and they're usually conducted with the intention of healing, with the intention of growth. They are usually conducted in a very sacred manner as well, so it's important to know this. Also really important as we get going, let's talk about the different types of traditions. Now, there's not just one size fits all ayahuasca ceremony. There is many different types of traditions that practice the use of ayahuasca as their sacrament. Now these different traditions will curate the ceremonies in different ways. Within these traditions as well, there can be variances also depending on the location, where the tradition comes from, the family, Now, myself personally, I've been fortunate enough to participate in ceremonies in the tradition of Shipibo, Quechua, and Inga. I just say this because each of those traditions and each of those ceremonies or group of ceremonies or whatever it might be have all been very, very different as well. At their core, they're the same. You're drinking ayahuasca in a ceremonial setting, but there's lots of variables and lots of different things in regards to how the shaman or the guide works, the music, cleanses, all different types of variables there as well. So to give you a bit of an idea, just to touch on it, there's actually 160 plus different indigenous cultures that practice the use of ayahuasca as a sacrament. So I think it's really important to know this and gain somewhat of an understanding of the tradition you are participating in, primarily to show respect, to show gratitude. It's really important to understand these ceremonies have generations and generations of knowledge being passed down for you to be able to be there at that particular point as well. So it's really important that we come to it with that respect and we come to it with that reverence. So I think understanding the tradition that you are participating in is really important, especially initially as you come to the work. Now, if you don't know, don't be afraid to ask your organizer, ask your facilitator, or ask the person organizing the ceremony, retreat, whatever it might be, what tradition you are participating in. They'll be more than happy to answer these questions for you. And it is a really important point to understand. Sort of getting into these traditions, to give you a bit of an idea, let's just talk about one part of it. There's lots of different variables in regards to how the ceremonies are held, but let's talk about like what you might hear in a ceremony, for instance, with the different traditions. So let's talk about Shipibo, a Shipibo ceremony, for instance. It's very likely you're going to hear ikaros. So ikaros are the songs, the chants, that the shaman will use to help him curate and guide people through their experiences. That is a very brief explanation of it. So you might hear ikaros if it's a Shipibo tradition, for instance, where if it was a ceremony with, say, Santa Daime, that is a more religious focused ceremony that is using ayahuasca as a sacrament. So during this type of ceremony you might hear hymns or different types of verses being said throughout the ceremony. Very, very different to the Shipibo tradition, for instance. Some ceremonies held in the Inga tradition will have a lot of music and be kind of joyful as well at certain points. So they can have guitars and drums and flutes and all sorts of different beautiful instruments. So they're all going to be kind of different. It's important we understand this so we can kind of lay a bit of a foundation of what to expect when we are coming into the ceremony. So now we've got a bit of an idea of what the different traditions are and what a ceremony is. We're going to talk about what the physical ceremony space could look like. Once again, there's going to be lots of different variables in regards to this, but I want to try and give you a bit of an idea of what the ceremony space might look like when you are coming into it. So usually and traditionally, ceremonies are held in a thing called a Maloka. So a Maloka is usually a very large, round, sometimes octagonal, sometimes square space. It's usually open air. So it's usually open air, or like just has sort of like mid-sized walls or bamboo, whatever it might be. But it's usually within this space, bit of open air coming through. Sometimes there is also like mosquito netting, but very big, very open sort of space. Now the roof in a Maloka is traditionally made out of like woven palm leaves as well. They can have quite high roofs. It's also important to note, so that's like the traditional setting of a Maloka. A lot of ceremonies are held in these. Now, sometimes ceremonies are held in other spaces, like a yoga dome or an outdoor area of some description, and occasionally sometimes in the open air. I have been in different parts of Mexico where they're holding ceremonies on the beach, obviously with lots of helpers, making sure people are cared for throughout the process, but the ceremony is held in the sand. One of the big things though, the space where the ceremony is usually fit for purpose. So it's not like having an ayahuasca ceremony in the middle of a forest and you pick a tree, or on the side of a mountain and you're sitting up on a rock. It's a focused area where all the participants will be together, generally in some sort of formation rather than spread all over the place, if that makes sense. Now, usually this is so it makes it a lot easier for the shaman or the medicine person to be able to curate the ceremony. It's also very important for making sure people are safe, secure and free from dangers throughout the plant medicine experience, because some people, and a lot of people, will go quite deep, and it can be a very powerful, somewhat challenging experience as well. So making sure people are safe, making sure they can't wander off, making sure they can't trip easily, making sure that the ceremony space isn't super high with no barriers or something along those lines is very, very important when it comes to a ceremony space as well. Sometimes some ceremonial spaces, so take note on this as well, sometimes some ceremonial spaces will have like an outdoor area or an extension of the Maloka or the yoga dome, whatever it might be. Usually this place is in quite close proximity. A lot of the time there might be like a little ceremonial fire. Sometimes some areas for purging are outside as well, or a nice sort of grassed area where people can sit and just sort of go through their process as well. So in the ideal world as well, and in many, many different scenarios, there will be bathrooms in close proximity with easy access as well. So usually not a lot of stairs. Hopefully there's a good amount of bathrooms as well. That's the ideal situation. Sometimes, you know, obviously ayahuasca makes us purge. There can be rush hour at the bathroom, so the more bathrooms, the merrier. Hopefully they are in relatively close proximity as well. Many journeys with ayahuasca, going from your mattress to your bathroom, literally can feel like you're climbing Mount Everest. It is a hero's journey sometimes, so the closer the better. Now, within this space as well, so we've got a bit of an understanding of what the external space is. Within this space as well, it's very, very likely, dependent on the way that you are participating, obviously a retreat center setting compared to, say, a very traditional setting in a village in the Amazon, for instance, they're going to be very, very different. But let's say, for instance, within a retreat center setting, there's very likely to be mats or mattresses set out within the space. Usually, if it's a retreat, for instance, there might be blankets, there might be a pillow that's provided, or you can bring yours along. Also, many places will have a bucket there as well. Don't let this scare you. It's a very normal part of the process. Note that you might need to bring some of these things with you dependent on how the ceremony is being held or the retreat's being held, but the organizer, the facilitator will give you all this information. If you're unsure and it's not there, just make sure you ask so you feel nice and prepared when you do come to the ceremony. So we've got the area there where the participants will be. Within the space also, there will very, very likely, there always is, an altar as well. So the altar is where the shaman is going to sit. It's usually the place where the medicine is served from also. Now, close by or in another position, sometimes there might be medicine musicians or some musicians close to the shaman as well. They usually are relatively close because they will do their medicine music or play their medicine music under the guidance of the shaman, depending on what's happening within the ceremony. There might be a spot for the facilitator. There might be a spot for helpers as well throughout the ceremony. Now, when it comes to lighting, a lot of the time ayahuasca ceremonies are held in darkness with some candles to begin, or regularly sometimes ceremonies are held with candles throughout the ceremony as well. So don't be worried about this. It's generally held with very nice soft light so people can go through their experience. When there is no candles, generally the moonlight or the stars or the outside light will sort of shine in, and you know, it's a very beautiful experience as well, so don't let this worry you too much. Generally, as a rule of thumb, just to give you an idea as well, most of these areas, I said before, are set for fit. Now, just to give you a bit of an idea, usually these areas are fit for purpose. They're designed, or they are being used to be nice, safe places. They're generally being used to be places where people can easily get to the bathroom or get back. Generally, they are free of obstruction, free of dangers as much as possible as well. So The ceremony space is really interesting, especially when you are moving into it or going into it for the first time. Don't let it scare you. It's a beautiful place. A lot happens within these beautiful spaces as well. So just go in there with an open mind, an open heart. It's a really important note to make. So now we have a bit of an idea of what a ceremony is. We have a bit of an idea of what the ceremonial space might look like. Let's talk about the people you might encounter during the ceremony, or the people you might encounter within the ceremonial space. So obviously you're going to have your ceremonial staff and guides. Now firstly, you are going to have your shaman. Now shaman is the word that is the popular word that a lot of people hear, but the people curating the ceremony, they can be a shaman, they can be a taita, they can be a maima, curandero, or a curandera, just to name a few. Essentially, at its core, it's the person who's carrying the medicine tradition. It's the medicine person. It's the person who will serve you the medicine. They are the person who is going to lead the ceremony. They're going to curate the ceremony and guide the ceremony. They are highly respected and experienced people who hold the traditions, the training, and the experience to guide everyone through the ceremonial experience, both in the physical and spiritual realms. I know this is a little bit of a tricky thing to get your head around initially, but the things that I have seen, shamans, taitas, curanderas, maimas do are very, very powerful. It's a very, very beautiful thing to be a part of. Now, your shaman might also sing icaros. Sometimes your shaman might play music. Sometimes they will play all different types of music to guide the ceremony as well. In most settings also you will find a facilitator. Now the facilitator is usually a person who acts as the organizer of the retreat or the ceremony, especially with the growth in retreat centers, etc. There's generally a shaman facilitator. Now the facilitator is usually on the medicine path themselves also. Has a good amount of personal experience from working with the medicine over many years, and will also have a good amount of experience with assisting people within ceremonies as well. So the facilitator will also generally assist people having a challenging experience. Generally this is under the guidance of the shaman, something that a facilitator might learn over a period of time. They'll also help lead the other people within the ceremony, obviously under the guidance of the shaman or the taita, curandero, maima. We went through it beforehand. Another role that the facilitator might take on also is leading things like the programs that are in place. So activities and workshops outside of the ceremony, i.e. preparation, integration, word circles, plant baths, organizing things like yoga, participant progress, helping people through their progress as they helping people through their process as they progress with the medicine work as well. Now, you're also within a ceremony very likely to find a medicine musician. This is very, very normal as well. So musicians, some ceremonies might have one, some ceremonies might have multiple musicians playing within the ceremony. Also, they're generally under the guidance of the shaman leading the ceremony. Multiple range of different musical instruments, from guitars to organs, flute, drums, rattles, chimes, all sorts of things are very, very common within the ceremonial experience also. Now, another part of the ceremonial team which you might come across will be like a helper or helpers. They're generally people who are at the beginning of their work with ayahuasca. They might just be volunteering a period of time to sort of help out as well. They will generally help with helping get people to the bathroom, making sure people are cared for and looked after also. It might include bringing people some water, making sure the ceremonial fire, if you have a ceremonial fire, they sort of keep that going. Also a very, very important part of the ceremony. Now, obviously there's different people in the ceremony also, the participants and you participating in the ceremony. I think, I remember when I first went to work with ayahuasca, 6 years ago, the first time I came, I wonder what type of people are going to be there, and the things going through my mind like, am I spiritual enough, and all this sort of thing. Is it going to be young people? Is it going to be old people? Whatever it might be. Now, ceremonies attract, and this is one of the most beautiful parts about the work with ayahuasca, ceremonies attract all sorts of people from all walks of life. This can be different ages. It could be someone in their teens to someone in their mid-80s. This can be different nationalities, ethnicities, spiritual levels per se, people from lots of different religions. I have been in ceremonies and participated in ceremonies where there is like sheikhs to different ceremonies, Christians, Catholics, Orthodox Jewish people. Like it doesn't really matter. It's very, very beautiful, the flexibility with this. So different religions, you'll notice that none of this is relevant in a ceremony, because that's a beautiful thing about the work with ayahuasca. At its core, we are all human, and that's what is most important at the end of the day. Now, one of the fears that people have at the beginning of their work with ayahuasca is not having experience. It can be really intimidating. Understand that there's no prerequisite here. There's going to be plenty of first timers. There's going to be people who might have done 3, 4, 5 ceremonies in different places. There might even be people who've participated in many ceremonies. It's not like a badge that you get every time you do a ceremony and your experience level goes up. It's not how the work with ayahuasca works. It's working with ayahuasca is a personal journey, but it's also a collective journey for everyone participating, and every ceremony is different. Every ceremony takes on its own life. Within these ceremonies as well, different people work through different things, and people that are at different points in their journey as well. So really make sure that you don't get hooked up on this experience thing, because it doesn't really apply to ayahuasca, and you're going to learn this as you do start with your work with ayahuasca. Something really important to remember is just embrace the diversity of your unique group and in its fullness. Embrace this, the diversity, or the way that your group is put together, because you're going to learn to realize that the group makes up a really large part of the experience. It makes up a really large part of the healing, and it makes up a really large part of the growth. What generally, let's say for instance, you're in a retreat setting, you come in as strangers, and you'll just watch the formation of this beautiful bond created between, sometimes 10, 15, 20 people within this experience. It's a very, very beautiful thing. So really do embrace it. You'll find that any fears or doubts leading into it will go straight out the window the minute you get there and you start moving into the experience. Now, we've sort of learned about the people. Let's talk about the things that you might encounter during your experience. So ceremonies are very unique. And in this brief description, I've tried my very best to give you a good understanding of what a ceremony might look like. I don't know if it does it any justice or not, but they are one of the most powerful, beautiful, and unique experiences that I've personally ever encountered, with myself participating and also facilitating ayahuasca ceremonies with a shaman and taita. One of the most beautiful things, and watching this process is extremely powerful and extremely beautiful. Now, it is important that they should be treated with a lot of respect and taken very seriously. This is for many reasons. This is for ourselves. This is out of respect for the tradition, out of respect for the shaman, and also out of respect for the participants. So people, making sure that people have the best ability to get the most out of their ceremony. So within the ceremonial experience, there definitely is an air of this, and I encourage you all to come to the ceremony with the same reverence when entering the space. So you really want to be, the minute you set foot into a ceremonial space, that you're taking it seriously. You're really coming to it, treating it like a meditation, treating it like you are entering something sacred, treating it like you are entering something that is very, very important and powerful, simply because it is. When it comes to noise, for instance, they can be quiet at points, or sometimes there's been ceremonies, or there is ceremonies that are completely quiet, apart from some purging and things going on there as well. As a rule of thumb, ceremonies are held in silence. When I say they're held in silence, I mean in silence in regards to voluntary noise. So talking, chatting, conscious laughing, conscious noise, playing your bucket as a drum or something like that. That's conscious noise. But in saying that, ceremonies can also be very loud as people are going through their processes. So those two things are very, very different things. You are definitely going to hear purging. Do not let this scare you. I know initially it can be a little bit jarring, but it's all part of the process, an important part of the process. Sometimes you might hear crying. Sometimes you might hear fits of laughter. You might hear people talking to themselves a little bit. You'll hear sounds of joy. Sometimes people are asking for help. It's a normal part of the process. It can get quite intense. Sometimes as people are going through their process as well, you might hear screaming or them releasing something that might have been holding them back for a long period of time. I say all this not to scare you, so hopefully it doesn't scare you, it's all part of it, but understanding that this is all very, very normal and very important for people will help you not be scared and help you not be worried, hopefully a little bit. I remember my first ceremonies thinking that this is chaos, this is a madhouse, what have I done at the initial point? I had no idea that's what it was going to be like. But learning that people are experiencing a full range of human emotion, that people are growing and people are releasing is a really beautiful thing. So be happy for them and just send some care, send some empathy their way. Another thing that you might encounter during the ceremony, you might see or hear the shaman doing cleansing work. You might see or hear the shaman moving energy. You might see the shaman doing his work essentially. It can be a little bit obscure if you have never experienced it before. It can be a little bit foreign if you have no concept of this, obviously. But sometimes it might be someone on their mat, they need some work or need some help. Someone might get taken up to the altar. This is all very, very normal within a ceremonial setting as well. Now, also some of the things that you might smell during a ceremony, there's all different types of cleansing plants and sprays that are used during a ceremony, from copal to palo santo, sage. Tobacco is used a lot within ceremony, whether it be burnt or cleansing with mapacho. There's lots of different things that go on there. It's all a beautiful part of it. You will learn to love it as you go through. But it's also good to understand that you are going to smell some different things in the ceremony as well. This is a small snippet. Now, apart from the ceremonial noises we spoke about before as well, there can be music. There will likely be music or icaros, some chanting as well, depending on how the ceremony and which tradition the ceremony is being held in. There might be some, there might be a little bit, there might be a whole heap. This will all depend on the shaman and the tradition, so just ask the facilitator or organizer about this as well. They'll be able to give you any answers that you need. Now we've covered all these things as well, I'm going to talk a little bit about an example of a timeline or a curation of how a ceremony might fold out for you. Once again, this is a broad idea. Hopefully this is just going to more put your mind at ease a little bit of how it could look. A lot of ceremonies are held at night. They can go anywhere from 6 hours to 10 hours, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer. But as a rule of thumb, it's going to fall within there somewhere. It all really depends. Some will actually go all night. They'll start really late and the ceremony concludes when the sun comes up. They can be very beautiful as well. Some ceremonies also are held in the daytime. It all depends. Now, first things first, generally how this looks, depending on when the ceremony is starting, you'll be invited to the ceremony space. From there, generally there's a blessing of the medicine. This can be a calling of spirits, or prayer will be conducted by the shaman. Sometimes in different traditions there might be individual cleanses that are done prior to entering the Maloka or ceremonial space, prior to drinking or participating with the ayahuasca as well. Some traditions will use or utilize rapé, which is a traditional tobacco snuff that's sort of blown up your nose. It's a totally different video, totally different medicine. Well, it's used a lot in conjunction with ayahuasca, but that's a conversation for another day. But that can happen at the start and also during the ceremony as well. Sometimes there is some breathing done, sometimes there's some meditations done. It all depends on who's organizing and the tradition also as well. But these are all very, very normal things that happen during a ceremony as well. Now, first things first, after that is done, generally what will happen is you'll be called for your first cup. Most of the time this is you going up to the altar to receive the medicine. So from my personal preference here, I think it is best to surrender to what the shaman decides for you in regards to dosage. If you do have any worries though, you can talk to the shaman about this, or you can talk to your facilitator about this. But I do think there is, when you're entering that space, I do think there is a really powerful aspect of letting go of control and allowing it to happen the way that it needs to. It's really important But once again, you are in control within a certain degree. Generally from there, after you've drank the medicine, you will return to your spot or your place or your mat, whatever it might be. And from there, from a lot of the ceremonies that I have participated in, there is then a period of, whether it be meditation or a period of sitting with the medicine, sitting with the ayahuasca, welcoming it to your body, maybe, just sitting with your intentions. It's usually a period of silence, a period of quiet, of just calm. And that's how the ceremonies generally do start. You don't drink it very rarely. It does happen occasionally, but you don't drink it and then it's like on. Generally there is a period as the medicine sort of starts to do its work. So after some time, generally what will happen is that it can be like an hour and a half to 2 hours, all depends, but usually then some music will start as well. The shaman or the musicians will begin playing or singing icaros. It all depends on how they feel they need to guide the ceremony and what has to happen at that point in time. Once again, it's important, there's no hard itinerary or a set list. It's not how it works. Sometimes between 1.5 hours to 3 hours as well after the first cup, at the discretion of the shaman, a second cup might be offered also, or you might be invited up for a second cup, but generally your organizer will explain this to you also. It's important to remember though that ceremonies take on their own life, so there's no hard timelines, run sheets or itineraries exactly. They have their own energy, they take on their own life, and it all depends on what's happening during the ceremony. Everyone is different. I've been fortunate enough to participate in a good amount for myself, but also from the perspective of a facilitator, participating a lot, and every single one of the hundreds of ceremonies that I have been fortunate enough to participate in have been all very, very different. So just remember this. There will be points of high energy and points of low energy. There's going to be points of lots of noise and points of quiet. Sometimes there's a whole lot going on and sometimes it's completely calm. All of one, all of the other. There's no rule of thumb here. Occasionally as well, a third cup or extra cups will be offered. Usually there is a cutoff point though where no more medicine or no more ayahuasca will be served. This is to make sure that people aren't still in their journey when the ceremony concludes. Now, as it starts to come to an end, some ceremonies will be closed officially and some will just quietly or naturally finish. It's another point to notice as well. It's also very normal for people to sleep in the ceremony space at the later part of the ceremony. It's very regular for people to sleep in the ceremony space all night. Hopefully that's going to give you a bit of an idea of how it all sort of looks during the ceremony and what a potential timeline might look like for a ceremony. So in conclusion, hopefully this video has given you a bit of an insight. There are many variables in different ways. Though you will likely encounter some of these, a lot of this, just remember to embrace the ceremony and the way it is curated, i.e. don't come with preconceived ideas of how you think it should be run, how you think it should be done. If you have done ceremonies beforehand, taking the curation of the previous ceremony and saying, well, this is when this is meant to happen, come with an open mind, come with an open heart. They're beautiful, beautiful experiences, and each ceremony gives us the opportunity to learn something different. Each ceremony also gives us the opportunity to dive deep and experience this beautiful medicine in a different way. So thank you very much for watching this video. Hopefully you found this informative. So if you have found this video useful, please do leave a like, please do subscribe. This is super helpful to us and helps us to keep producing high value content. In the end, thank you very much for watching today. I hope you found this valuable. I look forward to speaking with you next time. Thank you very much from the Conscious Collaboration.